atau gadgetnya masing-masing. Sekali lagi dimohon para peserta seminar untuk men-silent gadget atau smartphone masing-masing. Terima kasih atas perhatiannya.
Audio gimana audio? Yang tiga.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Prabhu Rabani Kapriani. It is a wonderful and precious change for me to be your master of ceremony in this beautiful Monday on 20th of April 2015 in our big event and seminar and national discussion about Indonesia's climate commitment and the new climate economy here in Ruang Apung Central Library, Universitas Indonesia, Depok. In this beautiful moment, I'd like to say welcome to Mr. Muhammad Ali Brawi, Magister of Engineering Science PhD, as Director of Directorate on Research and Community Service, University of Indonesia, and also certificate from Foreign Secretary Special Representative for Climate Change from British government, and former government scientific advisor and chair of the World Economic Forum's Global Advisory Council on Emergency Technologies. And also Professor Emil Salih, economist as first Staff Minister of the Environment Republic of Indonesia and Chairperson Advisory Council to the President of Indonesia, and Mr. Dr. Insinyur and Murti Imtiaz, Minister of Science, as Deputy Minister for Natural Resources and Environment, Ministry of National Development, Planning Republic of Indonesia and also all participants. Well, to take advantage of the time, let's start this agenda by welcoming address and speech. So, we would like to invite Mr. Muhammad Ali Brawi to deliver his speech. For Mr. Muhammad Ali Brawi, time is yours.
His Excellency, Sir Deputy, Her Excellency Ibu Dr. Enda Putri Ringkias, Her Excellency Ibu Dr. Amanda Kathleen, Professor Emil Salim, Dr. Jatma, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good morning. I would like to greet you a warmest welcome from the Rector of the University of Indonesia to the seminar and national discussion on Indonesia, climate commitment and the new climate economy. On behalf of the Rector, let me begin by extending my warmest welcome to our esteemed guest, Sir David King, who has been able to come to our university during his busy Asian trip to share his thought and ideas. I would like also to especially welcome our distinguished government officer, Ibu Dr. Enda and Ibu Dr. Amanda, to our green campus of the University of Indonesia. As we know, the purpose of this event is to discuss the government policies and its action plan involving all stakeholders relating to Indonesia's national commitment towards a new international climate change agreement. We will explore how international reports such as the new climate economy can shed light on how Indonesia can move forward. Let me also express my sincere appreciation to all of participants who have joined us today in this important meeting, both in person and online via our webinar portal. Ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed an honor to be asked to address this eminent group of panelists and all participants on an issue of such as tremendous importance, which represent, as Sir David called it, the biggest diplomatic challenge of this century. Not just to those of us gathered in this room, but for society as a whole. Higher education holds a special role in addressing the issue of sustainability and seeking solutions to address climate change. In particular, academic can contribute to three main areas. First, university can be better define the complex problems associated with climate change and evaluate and propose various sustainable solutions. Our scholars in all disciplines must address the various associated issues on intellectual, technological, legal, and moral challenges, such as how can we improve waste management, reduce our reliance on conventional fuels, and limit the greenhouse effect. How can we measure the impact of human activities on our natural environment? What can we do for adaptation and mitigation action to address this climate change? And ultimately, what type of policies, action plan, values, activities, and behavior that are needed to be created to improve the quality of human life. The second set of issues relate to pointing out the urgency of the need for action. Given trends of population and consumption, we have to define our priorities if we want to effectively address climate change. In this year of sustainability, as has been declared by the United Nations, the world population has reached 7 billion. That means that in the last 200 years, the Earth population has grown more than sevenfold. During the same time, energy consumption eightfold and economic output has increased 68-fold. It means that the increasing population, only 25% consume 70 to 80% of the world's resources. Last but not least, higher education has a vital role to creating solutions and providing leadership to address the complex dimension of climate change and to develop concrete, sustainable solutions. Ladies and gentlemen, it is important for us at the university to create a sustainable campus culture. For example, just last week a group of UI students announced that they managed to recycle waste glass bottles to create concrete material for construction. At the University of Indonesia, our research center for climate change, along with other research centers in engineering and other faculties, have been actively engaged in climate change issues, including environmental training, research on environmental services, ecological fiscal transfer, biodiversity conservation, and of course development of renewable energy and energy efficiency methods. University can provide the required knowledge and the initiative to drive national activities to move forward this country. In one area standard of development, UI had initiated in 2010 creating an online green ranking for world university, which received outstanding response from 360 universities in 62 countries. UI has more than half a century history of knowledge development in Indonesia, and the university is continuing its effort to provide opportunity without boundaries to develop our work to the best standard of academic excellence. Finally, institutions of higher education can and must partner with their communities to engage in sustainable practice. We must always seek win-win outcomes for our country development and at the same time for our planet Earth. All of which is the creation of legacy for all of us. As Professor Jeffrey Sachs stated, that the year 2015 will be our generation's greatest opportunity to move the world towards sustainable development. With this spirit, I wish you a fruitful seminar and discussion. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Okay, well, thank you very much to Mr. Muhammad Aligar for the speech. Made it useful, especially for him and generally for all of us. Well, I'd like to invite next Professor Emil Salim, economist, as First State Minister of the Environment, Republic of Indonesia and Chairperson Advisory Council to the President of Indonesia to give his speech. For Mr. Professor Emil Salim, the stage is yours.
Your Excellency, Sir David K., Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, the theme of my story is about the horse and the creek. One can bring a horse to the creek full with water, but one cannot force the horse to drink. This is the situation on climate change. We have a creek full of water since 1979. The first World Conference on Climate Change was held and to agree to combat climate change. It was then 35 years ago. It was re-emphasized in 1992 with the Convention on Climate Change. And so we have a continuous meetings every year, practically, and all experts then deliver the speeches, theories, and fill the creek full with water. And what is this water? One, we should manage urban cities that are forthcoming. The world will be by 65% full with urban cities. Urban city planning is necessary. The land use becomes an important element to combat climate change. Low carbon energy saving growth. So how to have growth with low carbon energy? Resource efficiency, investment in infrastructure, stimulate innovation, compact city development, stop deforestation, restore millions of hectares of lost or degraded forest, shift away from polluting coal to power generation. And so we have a list full that makes the creek full with water of proposals. And what is a horse? The horse are the people, the business, the producer, the government, the business enterprises, local, district, national, and global governments. These are the horses. And these horses are brought to the creek with all this proposal. The question is the horse drinking the water? Is the horse implementing the proposals since 1979 up to now? Basically, the question is no. Because between the horse and the water, there's a problem. The economy that surrounds the horse is a monetary economic environment. And in the economic environment, material gain are preferred more, are appreciated more than non-material gain. Individualism dominates more than social. One has a preference. The economy prefers more rather than less. The goal is to have high rate of growth, high GDP, and the essence of the whole strategy of development is more, higher growth, faster, bigger, and in numerical case, larger. This is the situation that we face. We know what to do. We know the water in the creek what to do. Control it, control pollution and so on. We know we face the government. But the government people, the business are surrounded by an economy which prefer more rather than less, which prefer GDP rather than quality of life, which prefer everything except to control climate change. 79, and now we are 2015. There is no dent in trying to control climate change. Big governments, powerful governments are still against the Convention on Climate Change. So, dear friend, the question is how to make the horse, the governments, the people, the business, willing to drink the water from the creek. And here, the key is that we must use the role of the government. We must change the budget system. We must change the fiscal system to let the government use the power to force, to make, to give incentive to the horse to drink the water. And what is this exactly? The government of Indonesia since 3 years have worked on the role of government with safeguarding green planning and budgeting. The government has worked out a green planning and budgeting system. The work has been completed last October 2014. It takes into account that we must change the valuation and sustainability of one natural resource account. Second, include human and social capital. Third, consider economic factors, but in relation to the social and environmental factors. And the guiding principle of this green planning budgeting is that the regional integration, improvement, and inter-island connectivity will reduce pressure on natural resources. This is specifically for Indonesia. The development is taking place only in Java, Sumatra, Bali. 82% of GDP is in Java, Sumatra, Bali, but less than 18% in Papua, Maluku, and the rest of East. So I'm having pressure on East West Java must be moved to East Java, and that requires opening up the infrastructure. Second, the demographic bonus capacity. How can we make use of the bonus capacity in the young will dominate till 2013? The young age group will dominate. They must be educated with a new dimension of economics, not the old-fashioned economic theories, but the new economics that takes into account resource and enrichment. Third, we must change the valuation of that resource, raise the value added, concentrate on development to raise the value added. Every activity that reduces the value added must not be used for development purposes. Fourth, concentrate on food, water, and energy security, efficiency in water, food, and energy resource use. And finally, good governance. And good governance that is able to provide incentives, financing, and deregulation to allow the horse to drink water. Dear friends, this green performance budget has been completed last October. It is completed in a two-level book with a program, with everything ready to take off. But since October, we have a new government. So, new government comes in, new people comes in. Books, studies that has been completed somehow remains on the table. So, may I then appeal to all the government officials today, think out again the developments that has been done for 3 years of study, a green budgeting policy using incentive fiscal for introducing the government power to change and to make the horse to drink the water. The genesis is down, and I hope that the government will accept this genesis. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much to Mr. Professor Ahmed Salih for the kind of gracious speech. Hopefully, it's useful for all of us in the future. Next, I'd like to invite Mr. Yatna Supriyatna as moderator to continue the next main agenda. To Mr. Yatna Supriyatna, the stage and time is yours.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Selamat pagi, Professor Emil Salim, Sir David Kings, ladies and gentlemen, Indo, Amanda, Wenda, and so on. Once that I already hear from Pak Emil, it's hard to talk about all these things. Pak Emil already explained everything, sorted out all these problems in Indonesia. He said about books and books. Of course, we are producing a lot of books, but how do we implement it? I think today we're going to hear about this. The experience in written, of course, that will be very important. But also we're going to invite very important very powerful Bapanas. Bapanas is Minister of Planning, the agency for the planning. Ibu Enda is the person who is going to explain about the planning, what I have mentioned about the books. So that's really going to be very interesting. While Ibu Amanda, of course, is the been working on the climate policy, climate dissemination, and so on. So I'd like to be very happy. Unfortunately, Hadi Daryanto, the Secretary General of the Ministry of Forestry, has not been showing up. So while we are waiting, I'd like to read the short bio of the speaker. First is Sir David Cate. The Foreign Secretary appointed Sir David Cate as his permanent special representative for climate change in September 2013. Sir David also was previously the government chief scientist advisor from 2000 to 2007. He also served the founding director of the Street School of Enterprise and Environment at Oxford University, and was head of the Department of Chemistry at Cambridge University since 1993 to 2000, and Master of Governing College at Cambridge 1995 to 2000. So he also published 500 papers on science and policy. Wow, that's really wow, 500 pages on science and policy. So David also declared year 2015 is the seminal year of the planet. And it's important to have said to defeat the Axis powers in the light of the atom bomb. When threatened in the Cold War, the US sent a man to the moon. When threatened by global warming, we truly need a single effort to save the planet. Something that is on the best mind and something that is international. So, I would like to call Professor Danny to the stage. I'd like also to read the short bio in Goela. Goela is Deputy Minister for National Resources and Environment at the Bapanas. He got a PhD from Colorado State University. He has been working in the government for 25 years. Of course, he's been the longest, but the very important, also responsible for they call the Indonesia Climate Change Trust Fund. So he's the owner of money of $1 million in Indonesia. Hopefully he can get some Brenda, I should call you to the stage. And the other speaker, Dr. Amanda Kartini, is a technical team member of the Indonesia Climate Change Management Team. Dr. Amanda Kartini also coordinator of the Communication, Information and Education Division at the Indonesian National Council on Climate Change and Manager of Climate Change Project in Indonesia. Dr. Amanda also a former Special Assistant to the Indonesian Minister of Environment. Now also is a chair of the Secretariat of the Conference President and coordinated the intergovernmental panel on climate change outreach event in Indonesia. Dr. Amanda received PhD from University of Michigan, US. Dr. Amanda, I hope that you can come to the stage. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have a lot of time. should ask something that behind the bureaucrat, although either he is bureaucrat, but he come here, I said to him, he is the university, so you can ask either scientifically judge or something that is very important on this problem of this, especially during the Earth Day. This week is Earth Day. Last night I saw the film in the National Geographic, Years Living Dangerously. So it's really, really good. This is the start where we are going to tackle climate change, forest or forest. So I think this is really important thing about Hanidaliano from the forest who are really affecting to some extent. We will also answer some of the questions. So we can start with Mr. David. If you want to know the stage,
Thank you very much, Dr. Surya. And I'm already delighted just to have heard the speech, the very sharp speech from Salih. These are important words. I am here in your university for the first time, delighted to be here and to have this occasion with Mark's audience and a group of some of the most important people here in your country. And I'm going to be talking to you about the world's greatest challenge. And these are challenges of a nature that we on this planet have never had to face up to before. So let me set the scene, try and establish this. So I hope that I've got some of the slides. Am I under any sort of control? Right, if I can have the first slide. The reason why the challenge is different from any previous challenge faced up to by civilization is simply population dynamics. And population dynamics is a good story, but with a very difficult challenge at the end of it. So we entered, as we heard before from Dr. Barrawi, we entered the 20th century globally with about 1.5 billion people. And during that century, last century, we started adding 1 billion every 12 years to the population. Now, I'm going to take that as a measure of success, because what we were doing was rolling out human well-being across the planet. And human well-being could be measured in terms of human longevity. More and more children surviving into maturity, and those children getting married, having their children. That was the reason we added to the population. So a measure of our success in science, engineering, medicine, technology was the rollout of human well-being that reached that enormous increase in the human population. The number of women and children in our societies, in Britain as well, used to be 7 or 8 on average. And then as that human well-being takes over, women have less children. And so the population growth comes under control. We see that we can anticipate now that by mid-century we will have a planet which will stabilize with 9 billion people. Today, we have to get smart and prepare ourselves as that horse goes down the water. We have to get smart and plan for that population. But underlying that piece of demographic is a new, rapid demographic change. And that is the rising planetary middle class. The middle classes are the people who consume the resources offered by the planet, and who also, unfortunately, ravage the global commons, the oceans, the atmosphere in particular. So look at the growth of the middle class. 1 billion in the year 2000, and in the first 13 years we've already doubled that number. 2 billion middle class people, 2 billion middle class consumers of the resources of the planet. And my extrapolation here is a fairly careful extrapolation, taking us close to 5 billion in just 15 years' time. That's again a measure of improved human well-being. But the key message is the planet cannot deliver the standard of living and the mode of living that the middle classes operated with in the 20th century. That is not fit for purpose in the 21st century. And so we need to transform not just what we're doing to the planet, we need to actually transform our mode of living if we're going to manage that process moving forward. My extrapolation of middle class may be over-optimistic because we need to make that transition and we need to make it quickly. If we don't make that transition, we will simply create dissatisfaction amongst those we expect to be in the middle class. And we've already heard urban growth is a big issue here. In 2008, more than 50% of that population was living in cities, large and small. And we anticipate by 2050 it will be 70% of that 9 billion population, 6.3 billion will be living in cities. So, and at that point, mid-century, urban growth will have approached its end. We therefore have the biggest challenge in urban growth that the planet will ever see between today and 2050. It's a challenge which we could rise to. We could create sustainable urban growth, or we could simply carry on in the way that we have in the past, in which case we will not deliver that middle class aspiration target. So I quite agree with the previous comments. Urban development is absolutely key as we go forward in time. And that phase of development is very much occurring in Southeast Asia. 90% of the original middle class population are here in Southeast Asia. And as we move forward, you see that there will be 3.3 billion urban dwellers in this part of the world. And another 1.3 billion in Africa. That's where most of the upcoming urban development is going to happen. Europe is already developed. North America already developed. South America, the most recent, already has undertaken that urban revolution. Now it's occurring in the eastern parts of the world. This is why it's so important for me to address you here in Indonesia. You're at the center. That's the challenge. You have the responsibility going forward in time. Now, here's the problem, and that's why the 21st century is such a big challenge. We have this demographic pressure, and I'm going to suggest it's the growing middle class that's creating that. That demographic pressure is bringing together a series of challenges simultaneously. It would be bad enough if we just had one of these challenges, but they're all coming at us together, which means that we, the global population, have to make a collective response to a collective set of challenges. And if we get it wrong, we can cause bad effects. So let me just take energy security and supply down at the bottom. Let me go to water resource first. Key to everything is water resource, fresh water. South Australia, in California, and in the state of São Paulo, in South America, they are undergoing the most severe drought known in those parts of the world at this point in time. If you take South Australia, they have been managing freshwater supplies with massive reduction in use per person. They've done that very effectively. They've now become a model of use of fresh water, just as Singapore has become a model of the use of fresh water. But at the same time, there's a solution available. There's plenty of ocean water, so you can desalinate ocean water. Australia has lots of coal, as Indonesia has, and so they are burning coal to make fresh water from seawater. The desalination process is very energy intensive. So the challenge moved from a challenge of water resources to a challenge of energy security. And in the Middle East, where there is a surplus of oil production and there's very little fresh water, you burn oil to make fresh water. And so when you drink a glass of water in Dubai next time, you're effectively drinking a glass of oil. So you shift the challenges around you. And when you burn oil and coal, you produce carbon dioxide, which produces global warming, and thereafter we've shifted the challenge across. And this desertification we're talking about is predicted by the climate science community to be the result of putting greenhouse gases on the atmosphere. So we're actually making the problem we're trying to tackle, the desertification, worse without a genuine solution. Then we need to remind ourselves that in parts of the world where there's a short supply of fresh water, there's a massive supply of solar energy. And so the solution is to use that energy-intensive desalination process, but with solar energy and not with fossil fuels. And that, in essence, is the solution to many of our problems. Let's look at energy sources that are renewably and sustainably available to us and utilize them wherever we can. And I include in here, of course, food production. If we look at water resource, food production, the connection is quite obvious. And as we create global warming, as I will show you, food production becomes a challenge also because of temperature rise. So we've got a double challenge there. Minerals, I've got minerals up there. This is a mineral-rich country. As we keep mining minerals to meet consumer demand, the resource dwindles. We take the easy available minerals first, and then we're left with more expensively available minerals. And we'll see the consequences of this. Ecosystem services. We, human beings, co-evolve on this planet with all of our ecosystems. So it's not an accident that the planet produces the right level of oxygen, nitrogen, and carbon dioxide in the atmosphere for us to survive and for the plants to survive that we depend on. That co-survival process has all emerged through that evolutionary process. So we emerged in a kind of steady state over the last few million years as humanity working alongside nature. And now we human beings, and we human beings alone, are in danger of upsetting the very ecosystems that provide us with our own living. That's the big challenge, and the underlying challenge. That ecosystem services and human well-being have to be seen to be sitting side by side, and yet, if I may pick up the wise words of Professor Salim, if we don't manage to have an economic system that puts equal value on improving human well-being alongside ecosystems, we're going to lose the battle that we're facing in this time. So there's the big challenge. And there are solutions. I want to emphasize that as we go forward. Is there any evidence to what I've just said? Well, let me just show you a commodity price index. So this is looking at a basket of commodities together. Key commodities, minerals, food, and energy. Each given an equal weighting. That's a bit random, but it's better to look at a basket of commodities. And you see that this has been normalized to 100 in that period of around 1990. Commodity prices rose in that period between 97 and 2010, rose to a level that we have never experienced before. Now, all of the economists would tell us, or most of the economists would tell us, commodity prices should be falling as we become more efficient at mining resources. Why the sudden rise in commodity prices? Two things. One, that rapid rise in the global middle class. Demand is increasing at a rate not seen before. But secondly, supply. The supply is diminishing in its resource in terms of easily available, cheaply mined supply. So as we increase the demand, we're finding that planet's resources are having to be mined in a more and more challenging and expensive way. There's no other explanation for this. You'll see that the oil shock increase there has an explanation that everyone understands. OPEC took control of oil supply. What surprises me is the very little discussion of this far bigger challenge that has come through just since the beginning of this century. In these prices, we look at food prices rising by a factor of 3. And when basic food prices rise by a factor of 3, it's the poorest people in the world who suffer. That's the problem. When I look at the Arab Spring in North Africa, and we look for the causes of that, I see quite simply the expectations of the rising middle class in that area of the world not being met because of the rising food prices, the rising energy prices, and the rising prices of commodities generally. So there's the challenge as we move forward in time. Expectations not being met because of these challenges. Now, all of this needs to be understood before we start talking through into solutions. Climate change is quite simply the biggest challenge of the lot. And so what I'm showing you here is rising sea levels in blue and rising average temperatures in red. Sea levels, much more reliable measure of what is happening because the sea is more dense than the air. It's less subject to immediate changes in weather. So the sea has a better averaging process. What you see there, sea levels rising since the 1860s and then rising more and more rapidly. Sea levels were rising in the beginning of the 20th century at about 1.7 millimeters a year, and that rise is now at 3.2 millimeters a year. The rise has contributory factors. It used to be mainly from the warming of the oceans and its expansion. And now we're adding in melting ice from ice on land. We're adding in a number of other factors. The biggest challenge to Britain on climate change is this rising sea level. We are an island nation, and quite simply, our coastline is under attack from rising sea level. And if you want to know why the British government, perhaps more than any other, is putting such an enormous diplomatic effort into this, it's because we see that this is a challenge to our continued existence as a nation. As we go forward in time, rising sea levels do diminish the size of the British Isles. Indonesia is a country also very much of which you have an enormous coastline. There are many, many islands. And I believe that Indonesia is another nation very much at risk from this rising sea level. Rising temperatures and rising sea levels are our two twin biggest challenges. Because of this, when I became Government Chief Scientific Advisor, my first action was to set up a team of 110 experts from outside government to advise the government on how to act on the challenge of rising sea level. We can see that when we have storms at sea, we also have storms inland. And so our rivers are flooding at the same time as our coastlines are being damaged. And London is situated on our biggest river, the Thames, coming up the Thames itself. So London gets challenged from both ends. And as a result of that program, we set up a massive program of managing floodwaters on the British Isles. Just over a year ago, we had our worst floods since the 18th century. And in those floods, damage, about £500 million worth of damage. If we didn't have that program, the damage would have been measured in hundreds of billions of pounds. We managed that process because we had a simple policy. Floodwaters have to be steered away from your major assets. So London was not flooded at all. All of the floodwaters were steered away from our major urban centres. That was a big program of work. I believe that every country needs a program of this kind. Because as we go forward in time, this curve will continue to rise, and the rate of increase will continue to increase unless globally there is a dramatic change in behavior. We need adaptation measures as well as mitigation measures. It's not a choice of one or the other. This is a slide which emphasizes going forward in time what the challenge of sea level rise will mean going forward. You'll see that if we get to a meter by the end of the century, a meter rise when you have storms at sea means much greater incursion of water inland. We're estimating that for China, for example, on the eastern coast, there's roughly 400 million people in line to be inundated before we get to that point. And these curves here are based on a fairly conservative analysis of melting ice. We just need to remember that as we move forward in time, the melting of ice on Greenland alone, if it all melts, gives us a sea level rise of 7 meters. And the scientific community is now saying there is a turning point at which the amount of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere passes that point, we will lose all the Greenland ice, irreversible. Now that's not going to happen all within 100 years, it may take quite a long time. But what it means is the future generation will have enormous challenges in it. And the scientific community also said, once we reach that point, it's difficult to see what technical solutions could come in to stop this irreversible thing happening. And of course, if this was accompanied by rising sea levels due to ice melting on Antarctica as well, then we have challenges that simply humanity will not be able to handle. That's precisely why we have to really manage this transition from fossil fuels away from fossil fuels going forward in time. We've just done an analysis on 3 different cities, New York, Shanghai, and Calcutta. We're looking at this return period. The way the insurance industry in particular looks at extreme weather events is to say, is this a 1 in 100-year event or a 1 in 1,000-year event? But here's the difficulty with climate change. This number changes with time. And so looking at these cities and looking at the number of events per 100 years, you'll see that although Shanghai may not look too bad, it's only roughly 20 events in 100 years. Okay, that's 1 event every 5 years. Major flooding events. And then you look at New York and Shanghai. Shanghai means we cannot possibly survive. Sorry. Calcutta cannot possibly survive. Flooding is more regular than non-flooding. So these curves here are a message to the scientific, to the living community from the scientific community. And the message is becoming clearer and clearer as we move forward in time. In 2003 in Central Europe, we had the worst the worst temperature rise, summer temperature in our history, in recorded history. And you'll see in black, in 2003, that extreme hot summer in Central Europe. Much hotter going backwards in time than any previous summer. The estimated number of fatalities was 70,000. It's the single biggest natural disaster Europe has experienced. 70,000 fatalities due to that extreme hot summer. Now, what you see in red is our Met Office showing their calculation of past behavior and future behavior of the temperature systems for the summer in Central Europe. Past, you can see in red how well it describes the black. How well or how badly, however you wish to look at it. I think it's a pretty good description. So this gives you confidence in the model. And then running forward on a business as usual scenario, you see that the average temperature in Central Europe, summer temperature, will be the same as 2003 in 2050. So by the time we get to 2050, when we have an extremely hot summer, it's going to be an extreme sitting on this rising base. So what we see from these challenges is business as usual doesn't work. We will really have to change our pathway and change it dramatically. Let me just stress the importance of food production in a rising temperature world. We tend to think of water as the only big challenge, but what we're seeing here is the mean maximum temperature at which these crops die. And so this means that if you rely on for your food, wheat, you'll see that relatively low temperatures can kill off the wheat plant. It will not be productive. So these temperatures here, they may seem quite extreme in some cases. The lethal limit up in the 40 to 45 degrees centigrade range. These temperatures may seem quite high, but with an average temperature rise by the end of this century of 4.5 to 5 degrees centigrade, which the business as usual looks like being, in many parts of the world we'll see temperatures above this sort of level. So we're seeing the challenge in food production from both water availability and from rising temperatures. The most important single new grant from the latest Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report, the review of the 10,000 odd papers that have been published by the scientific community. The most important graph in my view is this one. What they're saying is that temperature rises have already reached what you're looking at on the horizontal scale is cumulative CO2 emissions due to human behavior, and on the vertical scale the temperature. Temperature rise has already reached nearly 1 degree centigrade. If we burn as much carbon dioxide, as much coal, oil and gas again as we've already burned, we get to 2 degrees centigrade. And if we go beyond that, then we're heading up towards that 4.5 to 6 degrees centigrade world. So there's the most important message is we can only burn as much again as we've already burned since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution if we want to stay below the 2 degrees centigrade temperature. And we are burning it far more quickly than we have in the past. So there's the big challenge in our behavior. And the challenge means it's not tomorrow's problem, this is today's problem. I say that because this is the International Energy Agency forecast in billions of tons of carbon dioxide production as a function of time. And you'll see that the red curve is heading us towards that 5 to 7 degrees centigrade temperature the world, whereas the green curve is the one we need to be on to stay below 2 degrees centigrade. The turning point was a few years ago. Unfortunately, we're not on the green curve yet. The longer we delay getting onto the green curve, the more steep it has to be going down, and the more challenging it will be. So there's the nature of the challenge. This is why 2015 is such a critical year for the future of the planet. Will we in Paris reach a conclusion which switches us from the red curve to the green curve? That's the real question as to how well we've done in Paris. The UK policy, which was set out, I was chief scientific advisor talking to Blair and then Brown on this issue. We decided we will reduce our emissions by 80% by 2050. We won't leave it to negotiations. We will do this unilaterally, not because we thought that would solve the problem. We are only producing 2% of the world's CO2. We did this because we wanted to set an example for the rest of the world. We wanted to go into negotiations with clean hands, saying we are doing what we think every country should do. Why 80% reduction? Why did I choose that number? Quite simply, in 1990 we were emitting 10 tons per person per annum of carbon dioxide. By mid-century we will be at 2 tons per person per annum. I believe every country in the world needs to be aiming to be at or below 2 tons per person per annum by mid-century, including land use. And here in Indonesia, Europe, currently at about 8 tons per person per annum. In Britain, we have reduced our emissions so far by 29%. So we're now just below 7 tons per person. We will have reduced by 2028 because we have set carbon budgets into the future. We will have reduced our emissions by 52%. That is domestic emissions. So we are on that pathway, and it's a pathway we're trying to persuade the rest of the world to join us on, so that we actually do manage this collective problem. How are we doing this? Defossilize the electricity grid, so producing no carbon dioxide, but generating all the electricity we need. Energy efficiency measures, the low-hanging fruit. Use less electricity in the built environment, particularly and in factories, but also switching ground transport onto the electricity grid, so that we're not using oil, we're not using gas, we're essentially moving this sector into zero carbon dioxide emissions as we approach 2050. That's not going to be the end of the challenge. By 2070, we need to be greenhouse gas neutral across the world. So 2050 is a staging post on the route towards greenhouse gas neutrality across the whole world. How are we going to achieve greenhouse gas neutrality? Look back in time to that point I described when we co-evolved on the planet's surface. We were at virtual equilibrium with all living matter and geological systems. And in particular, the oceans and the forests were taking up the carbon dioxide that we animals were producing. So we need that balance again. The two lungs of the planet, the forests and the oceans, need to be returned to the state where they are highly efficient. And so the British focus on a forest preservation and regrowth policy is absolutely derived from this understanding. As we move forward, we, the human beings on this planet, need the services provided by the forests, or we will not survive. And so, the New York Forest Declaration, created by Britain, Germany, and Norway, and signed by the Indonesian government in September last year. That New York Forest Declaration isn't a wild declaration, it's a declaration of necessity. But by 2030, we will have reached the point of no no deforestation of natural forests anywhere on the planet. And we would have reforested an area the size of India by that time. Your country and my country have signed up to that. We have put up a large fund which we are using. The British International Climate Fund was created at nearly $6 billion. And 20% of that is used in avoiding deforestation and reforestation programs. We're very keen to work with governments around the world to see that we manage that transition process. So let me take you back to the issue of provision of commodities for this middle class and rising middle class around the world. And I'm going to show you here what is happening to crude oil production and oil prices. You'll see on this curve, we're plotting crude oil production in millions of barrels a day against crude oil prices. And the oil price is Brent crude, but that is the price for all oil. You see that when we were producing globally 65 million barrels of oil a day at the beginning of the curve, the cost was $15 a barrel. Then we rose to about 74, 75 million barrels a day, and the cost rose to $40 a barrel. That's what happened between 1998 and 2005. And then since 2005, crude oil production has not exceeded 75 million barrels a day. Crude oil production around the whole world has plateaued out at 75 million barrels a day. Demand today is 93 million barrels a day. So what is the difference? How do we meet demand? We meet demand with non-crude oil sources. Crude oil is effectively past its peak production. And now we're going to unconventional oil sources such as tar sands in Canada and Venezuela, such as 2-3 miles down in the ocean. We're going to non-conventional sources which are more expensive. Hence, that sudden rise from $40 a barrel to $140 with massive instability in oil prices. Our country used to be a net oil producer on the North Sea. And when I say net, we were exporting oil. We're no longer exporting oil. We passed our peak in oil production also in 2005. And we are now importing oil. Indonesia is in much the same place. So those countries, yours and mine, that have relied on the crude oil, will become dependent on expensive imports unless you make that transition to an economy which is not dependent on oil. So economically, this is a very attractive way forward, is to cut down on the oil dependence. I'm very pleased to see that subsidies for oil are being reduced in this country. What is needed, of course, is that people use vehicles that are more efficient, encourage the use of electric vehicles coming on board. There are all sorts of policy levers that can be pulled to shift away from oil dependence. Of course, this just matches what I was saying about where the new middle class is. The new demand for energy over the coming period, this is to 2035, and the information from the International Energy Agency. The new demand is essentially coming from non-OECD Asian countries. There's the heavy demand. The OECD increase in demand is a very small fraction going forward in time. This is the region of the world where the demand behavior going forward in time for energy is going to determine the future of the planet. It's not that it's only here the actions are important. Of course, OECD demand is already high, and their transitional behavior is a key part of this going forward. So if we just translate that, the blue is OECD countries, yellow non-OECD, and you'll see that the rise since 1959 is predominantly non-OECD. And going forward in time, the predominant demand, new demand, coming from those countries. What alternatives are there? So I've said that there are alternative ways forward. I was recently flown up to northeastern Brazil to see the world's first second generation biofuel plant. So this is a biorefinery. It's a full-scale refinery. It's the size of an oil refinery. The first thing to say about this refinery, it uses no input of energy at all. It is entirely producing all the energy itself that it needs to run. So there's no electric cable running into this plant. And what is the energy source? The energy source is the sugarcane fields around the plant. When they harvest the sugarcane, they are now also harvesting the leaf material, which they would normally leave on the field and burn. The input to this factory is the leafy material. The first part of the factory is an enzyme process based on the enzymes from a cow's stomach. So the enzymes convert this into carbohydrates, which can then simply be manufactured into liquid fuel. So there you see that you've seen 22 million gallons of biofuel a year. This is the first plant. The company is now on the way to building 10 more plants in the same region of Brazil. The farmers have got two products now. They used to only have sugar. They've now got sugar and liquid fuel. The liquid fuel, in the first part of that process, the enzymatic process, methane is produced as a byproduct. The methane is used to produce the electricity to drive the car. The methane is produced to use the energy to do all of the harvesting of the leaves of the sugarcane. And so what you see is the overall process, and they're selling methane as well to the nearby town. The overall process is net negative CO2 footprint. You're using CO2 produced from solar energy in the plant, and everything else is run from that CO2, from the cellulose that's produced in the process. Now, I think there's a model of the way forward. It's economically very attractive. As I say, two products instead of one for the farmer. I don't see why every third farm should shift in this direction to having two products. Now, there's some way to go. And we have to watch what is happening in Brazil. There's no question. This is world leading. There are other laboratories working on alternative processes. But the fact that they've managed to get this up to industrial proportion is remarkable. This was a PowerPoint presentation 4 years ago. It was nothing, just a PowerPoint presentation. And now it's an operative factory pumping liquid fuel out. As we move forward, we need to think about commodities and reuse of commodities. And we're now beginning to talk about remanufacturing. You design the manufacturing process so that you can remanufacture. And one of the big challenges is in the circular economy car, the car that is no longer a waste itself when it comes to the end of its lifetime. I believe this is the first example of a circular economy car. So this car is made from waste plastic. You imagine the average car has 1,500 volts in its chassis. This car has no volts in its chassis. The chassis is one piece of molded plastic, and it is produced in 50 seconds on the plant. You can watch it go from waste plastic bottles to chassis in 50 seconds. A whole car, everything is made of plastic, and emerges at the end of the plant in 5.5 minutes. Right? complete revolution in car manufacturing. This is simply a group of brilliant people led by Lord Murray, brilliant people thinking afresh about how do you work in a zero waste economy. Gordon Murray is a Formula One, was a Formula One car designer. He's much more proud of this than all the Formula One cars he's made. But this car has many Formula One problems. One is it drives very fast and holds the road very well. But another one is when it's in an accident, the occupants of the car are protected by plastic bars around them, and the rest of the car completely destroyed in the collision. It takes up all of the energy of the collision. And he just says, when you're in an accident, pick up the pieces, take them back to the factory, and 5.5 minutes later you can drive the car. And that's saying zero waste. And as we move forward, manufacturing all has to shift into this zero waste area so that the demand for new commodities can be very, very substantially reduced. I think this is just one of the many ways forward. I just had perhaps one of the most exciting drives in a car coming here from the ambassador's residence. We had a policeman on a motorbike ahead of us, and how we got through the traffic I just can't explain. It seemed that the car we were in became much narrower as we got through the gaps. I have travelled to more than 50 countries in the last 18 months on my campaign, and there's not a city that doesn't look like this. Our cities are meant to be designed for human beings, but they've been taken over by cars. There's something quite astonishing about our economic mode of development, in which the mode of development takes us over. There's nobody who thinks that's a good idea, to sit in traffic like that all the time. But it's always an incremental addition of next year another 100 cars on the road and so on. It's that increment that we manage to put up with. There's a few cities that change, and one of them is Bogotá in Colombia. They had a remarkable man, Enrique Delgado, and Enrique simply said, let's give the city back to the human beings. And what he said was right. On those 5-lane highways, each way, going in and out of the city, when he became mayor, the outside lane became for pedestrians only. These are now green walkways going through the city. The second lane, bicycles only. Third lane, slow buses that make many stops only. Fourth lane, fast buses that make a few stops through the city only. And the fifth lane is for those who still want to take their cars into the city. This is a transformation. These two photographs are both of Bogotá from the same point of view, just 3 years apart. Same time of the day, same amount of people working in the city. And what you see on the left-hand side, people always driving into the city and parking on the pavement, vertical parking. We couldn't, as a pedestrian, even use the pavement. And then what you see is that the pavements have been returned to people. Buses, frequent buses, and people meeting and talking to each other in the buses. Or, on those walkways, people dressing up and talking to each other on the walkway as they walk in. This is how human beings like to be there. But a transformation that was brought about at virtually zero cost. And the long-term saving in terms of managing the roads is improving the economy of the city of Bogotá. So you can see that visual change. Oh, by the way, on the left-hand picture, you'll see that the people of Bogotá have forgotten that their city is surrounded by mountains. So the co-benefit of all of this, clean air, they now see the mountains again. So why do we suffer? It's simply because active imagination, and we need to revive that human ability to imagine a better future. Here's imagining a better future. How do we fly if we are not supposed to use fossil fuel? Kerosene is used by aircraft, and it's quite difficult to think of a liquid fuel that could be obtained even from second generation cars. Now this is a British company putting up an idea. It's called Variable. It's made of aluminium. In that sense, it looks like an Airbus or a Boeing. But of course it's an airship. And inside are 12 bags, and those bags are filled with helium from a helium cylinder inside the airship. So you release helium into the bags, and the airship takes off. There's zero energy used to get this thing take off. Freight in this 1,500 tons it'll carry. So you're lifting 1,500 tons without any use of energy. Now you say, having lifted the tomatoes from Spain and now you want to take them to Britain, you still have to move the aircraft. It's big, it's 200 meters by 60 meters. The cross-section of solar energy is big. Covering the solar panel, and you're using solar energy, and you can get this up to 300 kilometers an hour. In other words, it travels 30 miles. You want to pick up the tomatoes from the farming center in Spain, you just lift it up. You don't land the car, you lift it up into the car. And you go to deliver to the supermarket depot, lower it onto the roof of the supermarket depot. No need to have an airport, no need to have railway lines, buses, lorries, everything clogging up the system. You've got a virtual infrastructureless means of air transport. Transformational for this country, I think. If you imagine just moving stuff around Indonesia, if you have a number of these. So I think these are the ideas that will transform our ability as we move forward to deliver a society focused on human well-being, but without all of the costs that have been developed through our previous efforts. In Britain, we've set up an organisation called Future Cities Capital. I happen to be the chairman of this. And we have a big building, a green building in the centre of London. And we're 50 staff, we will be 100 staff. We are offering this as a global facility for urban development. As I said before, I agree fully with Professor Sally. Urban development is going to be absolutely key, and it's key in this part of the world. How much time have I got? I need my moderator. Should wind up. No. Waste towers. I'm sure they don't exist here. Waste towers. Manila has now banned plastic bags. I just show you this picture as an indication of the kind of society we developed in the 20th century and the kind of society that is totally inappropriate for the 21st century. We need to develop not a linear economy, commodities out of the ground and then throw them away, but a circular economy. And at that point, I think I will draw this to a close and thank you for your patience.
Thank you. I really think that if there is any burning issues you want to raise to Professor David, any burning issues you want to clarify or question or comments? Yes. Three major in environmental engineering. I want to ask you that the last slide you showed us is about the waste. Do you think there is a problem to develop waste to energy, like there's an aerobic digester or maybe a thermal use to convert waste to energy? Because of the problem, I think we have the solution already. It's the waste to energy. You can use the waste to provide energy. Like it can reduce a lot of problems that you already showed us. Do you think that the waste to energy can be developed in Indonesia, and how that the waste to energy concept in your country? Thank you.
Of course, converting decomposable waste to energy. That tower, the waste tower that I showed was largely plastic, which is not decomposable. So we're not going to get energy out of that. Instead, let's make cars out of that, is what I'm suggesting. Yes, any decomposable waste is capable of producing methane. The methane can be used as an energy source. And every time we think about waste, let me just focus on human waste. We eat food, we create waste ourselves. City of New York. The citizens of the city of New York produce about 1 billion grams a day of solid human waste. What we do is we treat that, every city of New York, we treat it, we put it into the ocean. And that solid waste contains nitrates, phosphates, that's about 1% of it, extremely expensive. We recover phosphorus, we convert it into phosphates, we take nitrogen out of the air, make nitrates out of it, and we put that into the lab. But then, after it's been material waste, we push it into the ocean. We're destroying the ocean, but we're nitrifying the ocean, so we're losing phosphate. What is left, if you extract the nitrates and phosphates, is fiber material, which can be used for energy, or it can be used for enriching the land. So, you're right, absolutely right in your thinking. There should be no waste. Either converted to energy, converted to improving the land, but also take the valuable stuff out. The nitrates and the phosphates will pay the cost of the whole process of the sewerage plant.
Thank you. I really believe that we have to move on, and we'd like to invite you to the stage, and Ibu Amanda. But also we have a guest, Pak Agus Sarsito, Dr. Agus Sarsito also is from Ministry of Water. With that, we want to start with your presentation.
From here because it's a difficult job for me. After Pak Emil Salim says that whether the government of Indonesia can put interesting things in the country so that the horses are tempted to drink. And the second is from Sudeti whether Indonesia will contribute to the problem or contribute to the solution. So my job here is just wanting to share and let the audience judge whether Indonesia is going to be part of the solution or part of the problem. Whether the government of Indonesia is really putting interesting things in the creek and can persuade the horses to drink. So I'm going just to share what we're doing exactly. So bear with me on the technicality. First is, I wanted to talk about commitment, second is on the progress, and third is what we are going to do at least in the for the future. Just to remind you, or probably to certificate, you never really see what Indonesia are doing, that we are voluntarily committed to reduce GHG emission reduction, to increase quality. And also contribute to global action on climate change. And three, policy and action on climate change is part of the Sustainable Development Pathway. So I think since the beginning, Indonesia not just tackling climate change, but we also try to connect that with the effort on sustainable development. And here is the commitment, just to remind you a little bit, that there are 5 main sectors that we think can contribute to the emission reduction. There are 2 presidential regulations. So this is the force, so that the force may drain the water. And these are the allocation for sectors. I think Indonesia is one of the countries who dare to really allocate target on the sector. Some countries only at the national levels, and some of the countries even didn't make any commitment. The other thing is also Indonesia is also one of the few countries who makes sub-national arrangement. And now I joined the Open Working Group on SDG, which is just finished last year. The goal of climate change in the SDG, one of the 17 goals in SDG now is climate change. One of the targets over there is make climate change mainstream into the development until the sub-national level. And I think I can say, at least at the government's level, and our effort that we do make a sub-national plan for reducing GHG emissions. And we are making Babida as the coordinator at the provincial level. So the national level is Babinas, at the provincial level is Babida. We also make national coordinating team, which the members are the technical ministries who are responsible for that 5 sectors. We do regular monitoring with technical ministry and also local government. And this is also the thing that since the beginning, we are trying to connect the emission reduction, which is actually is in the it's in the environmental pillar, become one of the pillars of the sustainable development. I remember the first time I presented in the forum, and Professor Emil Salim as the moderator at the time, that I can use this graphic to continue the work on sustainable development. The progress, the milestone that we did, I think for the past 5 years, we already have a mitigation action plan. We just finished the adaptation plan last year with 15 pilot or 15 projects representing 15 different characteristics of vulnerability. Secondly, we also have, as I mentioned before, the sub-national framework, and we do have the capacity building. Until now, we do have a meeting with the local government every quarter. And every quarter we have 3 to 5 days, depends on how difficult the challenge on the substance that we have every time. And I think it's not just the government of Indonesia, also other development partners are also supporting us in doing this. Awareness, knowledge and ability, monitoring and reporting, and also now the local government start to collaborate with the private sector in the region. Moving a little bit outside or more on the emission reduction, we also joined the 10 years framework on SGP, and now the Ministry of Environment and Forestry are making the test of SGP framework with the CADIC, the Chamber of Commerce. Sustainable and Smart City, we have the Community and Ministry of Public Works, which is really responsible for that, also the green building. We promote open space and city forests, especially in the big city. Very useful subsidy just a few months ago. The green procurement, we also try to develop with the procurement offices. Green financing, we've been talking with the central bank and also the oversight committee for financial institution, BOJK. The other thing, this is the promise that I make to Professor Emil Salim, is on the data measurement. Because back then, environment doesn't have, they do have the standard, but when it comes to development, they don't have the established data system, and they don't have development indicators in the development plan. And so now, in the medium-term development plan, which was finished last January, emission reduction by now is in the development target. And now we also have an index on environmental quality, IKLH, which was built since 3 years ago, just recently, also has the target of indicators in the development plan. We are now working on the depletion data. Whenever the government of Indonesia or Bangladesh at least wanted to know about the depletion of natural resources, we always ask experts from university, but we don't have available data system to calculate that. Now we are with the Central Bureau of Statistics and also Ministry of Environment working with the World Bank, making the data on depletion. And now we are also preparing a national data system, especially the environmental pillar, for indicators for the SDG, the post-2015 agenda. Now we also do many pricing for renewable energy. So this is the kind of fiscal incentive that Professor Emil Salim mentioned. Now, mitigation action. We are 4 years of empirical experience already, working on the ground, not just national level. There are excluded and included activities in the action plan because the action plan was formulated since 2009. And so at that time it was just based on theory. But having 4 years of experience, I think we have an idea what are the activities that is on the ground need to be included. And some of the activities in the action plan are not really existed or still difficult to be implemented on the ground. We do a lot on capacity and knowledge and know-how because turnover in the government institution is very high because of the democracy, the direct election and all. And also now we are open to community and private sector collaboration. The action plan now is under review, and we hope that the result of the review can be used as input for the INDC, Independent National Determined Contribution. This is the one that we will talk about in banks. Now we are still working, so there are a group of experts who are working with us on this. We finished with, I think, 3 sectors. We are still going for the other 2 sectors, namely industry and also waste. We finished with forestry and peatland, we finished with land base, we finished with energy and transportation. So that, there are steps that we conducted during the review. And of course, the review later on will come up with a target and also coming up with the policy intervention that is needed for the post-2020 commitment. These are the relation between the RAN, the action plan, and the INDC. I think somehow I explained that already. And of course, on the path climate action and sustainable development that I mentioned before. This is in summary is the medium-term development plan for the current government that was just finalized. The vision is Indonesia sovereignty, self-reliant, and gotong royong. It's hard for me to find gotong royong in English, so I just put it like that because this is the characteristic of the Indonesian people. And there are 9 development agenda. We probably hear over and over about the Nawacita. And sustainable development is mainstream in the development plan. What does it mean? It means that every sector needs to implement sustainable development, and now we do have the indicators outcome for that, which is an index of quality environment that I mentioned before. Mainstreaming of sustainable development is together with good governance and mental regulation. So a lot of behavioral changes that Professor Anderson talks about and also Sir King talks about, it's also in the mental equation. You have to have a new paradigm in your behavior. Climate change is continued to be a cross-sectoral program because since last medium-term development plan, we already have a dedicated program for a certain sector to be able to meet the target. And there are 41 strategic development issues. For the first time, Professor Anderson, water security become one of the issues. So these are the development norms, and that the 3 dimensions of the development, given the development dimension is still very important, including the technical character building, sectoral development, food sovereignty, energy and electricity, maritime, marine, tourism, and industry. And then equality development dimension. Know that inequality is also rising in Indonesia, so this is a very big concern. And also inequality, as Professor Rizal mentioned about Java and South Java. So there is a target also for the share of the local GDP in outside Java in their region. And eastern region is become the box. Now I wanted to show you a little bit how we not just tackling the emission reduction, but it's also already start the sustainable or green action. For example, in a forest and peatland, the very famous moratorium is continued. Illegal logging is one of the issues in the current regime. Sustainable forest management. We have a target to make the forest management unit and in every district, so that for sustainable forest management can be applied in a more local level. Controlling forest fire is becoming part of the duty of climate change within the Ministry of Environment and Forestry. Deforestation and forest rehabilitation, there are some targets on that also in the medium-term plan. Water security, as I mentioned before, conservation and the capstone area is a big issue. Land rehabilitation and also water cycle rehabilitation. This is just a few of the policy and action in each issue. In agriculture, the Indonesian sustainable palm oil is already enacted, and we are trying very hard that every actors will apply these sustainable practices. Sustainable agriculture has become more and more widely used and also put into the extension workers. Biofertilizer, organic farming, low emission seed and cultivation. Interestingly, through the ICCF, which is also supported by UKCC, we find that the most low carbon emitted seed is Sierra. And so those are some of the examples of the research that we also do. Energy and transportation, reduction of food subsidy, control coal production, reducing the next FPGM, the production of coal will be controlled only to 400,000 tons per year. Green building, ocean connectivity, energy efficiency. There is a government regulation, but I think we will work hard. We need to work hard on this.
Sure.
Waste management, as Sir David King mentioned, biogas. Actually, communication with the local people or community is that with the same activity, actually climate change can bring new benefit. Because usually biogas, when people do a biogas project, they're just thinking about biofertilizer and biogas, but now you can calculate them also as emission reduced activities. On the enabler, I think I mentioned about data and indicators. On the governance, one map policy was already formulated by the UKP board at the time. Now we are working on the 10-day capacity map. We do strategic environmental assessment for the whole big island, and now we are making those data as a carrying capacity map. Central local government environment monitoring system also will be done. And several, I think lastly, also that, as you mentioned, environmental services become the source of a new revenue, not just for the country later on, but also for the community. And this is very important so that people will not pay conservation and protection of natural resources and environment as a cost to the current generation. Creative industry, I think more and more cities are really developing this. Economy of biodiversity now. The government of Indonesia reviewing the Indonesian biodiversity and trying to put this economy of biodiversity as the source of new income, especially for the local people. Green profession and green jobs. Capacity and building and also communication. I think today's event is also one of the effort to really put this communication in the university. Lastly, I just wanted to mention a little bit on Indonesia climate change task outreach. KCC again, I think support for the second phase now. Second phase means that now ICCTF has already become national class 1. Until last year, I think we are in the supervision of the UNDP, but now we do have the national class 1, which really pull the fund from the development partners and also from the government of Indonesia contribution can be used by everybody, ministry, central institution, local government, NGO, CSO, university and private sector. These are the milestones of Indonesia on the ICCTF, and ICCTF is playing a vital role in supporting Indonesia to reduce emission and also later on contribute to the global climate change mitigation and adaptation. Thank you very much.
I think we have, of course, we have 2 more speakers, but Ibu Ega has to see the minister very soon. So if you have any burning issues, want to give or want to ask, maybe 1 or 2 questions. Pak, di sini saya, yes, Ibu. Yes, Pak, silakan.
Thank you. My name is George Fabian from Surya University and from Masyarakat Konservasi Indonesia. My burning question is, I've seen a lot of roadmap, seen of targets. So the question is, how are we going to cope with that? Are we going to create a public accountability system? Whatever. Is there any monitoring for that, and so that we can tell the public how far we are now? Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, Senator. My questions are two questions. First, when you mentioned about my name is Yunita, sorry, I'm an anthropologist from the University of Indonesia. So you mentioned 3 dimensions: human development, sectoral development dimension, and equality. My question is that how are you going to integrate those 3 dimensions? Because you cannot separate human development dimension from the sectoral development dimension. And I see under the regional autonomy, sectoral development, it is sectoral. So eco-sectoral is great there. And then the human dimension, it's difficult to separate it, but I would just like to know the integration of those in your program. The second is that I'm happy with all the agricultural programs like sustainable agriculture, etc. But now the question is that with the program of our government to improve, to boost up the production, to have self-sufficiency in rice, for example. So I'm afraid, I'm very concerned that the green revolution paradigm is returning to how to boost up the productivity, how to use more fertilizers, how to use more pesticides, for example. So how those two conflicting programs can be solved through this kind of your programs, especially the ICCD and also the mitigation and adaptation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and I'm sorry that I have to leave only Pak Jatman. Pak Rosadi, I think the monitoring done also by Bapak Technical Business. You can see the report in the website, and we also produce the report every year. But this is to collect what kind of activities that is done by the local government. Because there are 2 presidential decrees. The one who really need to do the MRP is the Ministry of Environment. But for the purpose of Bapenas is really to see that there are real activity on the ground which are contributing to the emission reduction. The purpose is that, second is also that if more and more activities are low carbon on the ground, then the quality of development will also increase. You are welcome to visit the Rakyat Secretariat website. It's reported over there every monitoring, quarterly monitoring that we have. On the question of the human dimension, I think since the beginning, even when we talk about climate change, I mean, it's really difficult to the local level. I mean, it's in a way that when we talk at the global level, thinking that there is carbon, and if you are not emitting carbon, then you can trade that. It's really difficult to be understood by the people in the region. So at that time, I didn't really aim for a very transformative sort of speed. So what I use as an example is biogas, because we know when in the district has a lot of cows, people nowadays have a biogas project or biogas in their surrounding area. So I said, why people do biogas? Because they don't have access on energy, or they wanted to save money. rather than buying kerosene and some other or gas. So they can produce, if they have manure, they can produce gas. If they have manure, they can produce biofertilizer. But I said, because of this emission reduction idea, actually you have a benefit that you never think before. What is the benefit? Because you don't consume kerosene, then that means you avoid of making emission. So I didn't just introduce new activities, but I really try to communicate that there are a new benefit. Second is also a lot of local government have a low access on electricity. Now a lot of local government use street lighting from solar energy. And I said, because of that solar energy, you reduce the electricity consumption that coming from grid, which is probably produced mostly by diesel. And so with that, then if you calculate the solar energy that is used for street lighting or for other purposes, then those are the activity which contribute to the emission reduction. So then it takes about 5 months to really make people understand climate change with the current activities. And so with that kind of communication, I think the human perspective, the behavioral perspective are over there. Of course, the human pillar over here is the one that is dealing with the classical education and all. But second is also we are trying to put the green sustainability aspect into the curriculum. I think the Ministry of Environment already have a long history on that. Vidya Wiyata and also school which have a particular focus on sustainable development. But the other thing is also that more and more now young people outside the school activities are introduced to the green activities. That's another way of doing it. The third is also when I talk about university or when I talk about communicating with 33 local government, Bappenas and then technical ministries didn't do it, do ourselves. So we also contact local government, local universities, using local expertise to really help us communicating and educating the local people. So through that activities, I think the local perspective, local habit, and local wisdom hopefully can be put into this equation. I think I answered to your question already.
Thank you, Donna. I believe we're not to go, but maybe you can stay home for a few minutes
Okay. I'll continue. The next agenda is the giving of token of appreciation that will be given by Mr. Muhammad Ali Brabi to Sir David King, to Mr. Ali and Sir David King, the stage and time share. The next token of appreciation also will be given to by Mr. Muhammad Ali. Give applause for Thank you, Mr. Ali and Sir Janet. And also the next agenda too is the giving of token of appreciation to Miss Dr. Engineer Roro Eda Urentias, Magister of Science, that will be given by Mr. Yana. Gilbos for Professor. Thank you for doing that. And the next session, I would like to come again to Mr. Yana. Time short.
Okay, we have to continue. I think we have to be until 1 o'clock because the king has to leave 1 o'clock. So what happens is that after Bueda, mostly on his government planning and so on and so on. So Ibu Amanda will talk about her experience, especially in the National Council on Climate Change negotiation, and also she's been working with the youth. So I think with Amanda, yours.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat siang. Sir David King, distinguished guests, it is really an honor to be in the same room with scholars and students of this esteemed institution. Thank you, Pat, right now for inviting me into this event. Well, after learning from the previous speakers on policy and political issue, and in this academic surrounding, I think it is only fitting if we talk about education, training, and public awareness. I will eventually come to what Article 6 is in the next slides. But it would be nice, Sir David, if you remember this picture. We were at the Indonesia Pavilion at the COP20 in Lima, Peru last December. And this Indonesia Pavilion was made possible by participations from stakeholders. Some of them are in this room. And Sir David King was one of the speakers with high-level officials from Japan, France, and also Professor Ahmad Nikolai was there. He is also now the President's Special Envoy on Climate Change. This high-level session shared the views and challenges of a low-carbon economy and explore ways to secure a low-carbon society. I think low-carbon society is inseparable with our topic today, the new climate economy. Actually, that is the essence of that report. So we have the goal here, the question that this report tried to answer. How can decision makers achieve their economic and social goals while simultaneously reducing the risk of dangerous climate change? And then there are 6 work streams, and then there is a global action plan that covers 10 issues. So that's why I mentioned the low-carbon society is very much related to the new climate economy that is on the new agenda today. This picture, I think it's an old cartoon, but this one actually illustrates what's happening now, that scientists and decision makers don't see eye to eye. But scientists are mostly involved in the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change that Sir David mentioned before. Sir David also mentioned the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Indonesia is active in the IPCC and also partly in the United Nations Convention on Climate Change. The IPCC, as we know, is a scientific body under the auspices of the United Nations. It reviews and assesses the most recent scientific, technical, and socio-economic information produced worldwide relevant to the understanding of climate change. Whereas the UNFCCC is the convention that was signed by many countries around the ICCC, it is important to emphasize that improving awareness and understanding of climate change and creating solutions to facilitate access to information on a changing climate are key to winning public support for climate-related policies. That's why there is an Article 6 of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change that calls on governments to educate, empower, and engage all stakeholders and major groups on policies relating to climate change. In particular, Article 6 of the Convention addresses the issue of climate change-related education, which we have discussed Indonesia is doing, training, and public awareness. It is the main vehicle by means of which the Convention fosters action to develop and implement educational and training programs on climate change. So these are the 6 components of Article 6, and I believe if discussed Indonesia will be involved in more of the elements of Article 6. The first one is education at the primary and secondary levels that will ensure that today's young people fully understand the challenges that their generation is expected to face in the decades ahead. Second, training together higher institutions, like what we are doing now, will provide the practical skills and advanced knowledge needed by climate change professionals. Third, successful public awareness campaigns will engage communities and individuals in the common efforts needed to carry out national and international climate change policies. And fourth, ensuring public participation in decision-making and public access to information will provide people the tools and opportunities they need to play a more active role. And the 5 elements can all be strengthened through international cooperation. That's what we are doing actually now, where the UK government with the University of Indonesia are collaborating in today's event. I will not go into the detail, but these are the elements of Article 6. And I would like you to pay attention on the scope of the local work program on Article 6. It sets out the scope of and provides the basis for action on activities related to the 6 elements. Indonesia has a national focal point on Article 6 of the UNFCCC and has submitted views and information from the government of the Republic of Indonesia on review of the implementation of Article 6 of the Convention, including programs and activities of the stakeholders. Over the last few years, actually over the last 3 years, there are several exercises conducted by the National Council on Climate Change, which tasks and functions are now merged into the Ministry of Environment and Forestry. There were 3 documents produced: the Indonesian strategy of Article 6 of the UNFCCC, and then there was a national climate change learning strategy, as well as national action plan on access to information and public awareness. Of course, these are living documents, and you are all welcome to access the document on the website. And also important, at COP20 in Lima, Peru last December, where Sir David King was there as well, there was the Lima Ministerial Declaration on Education and Awareness Raising. So ministers and heads of state made a declaration on this issue that stresses the fundamental role of education, training, public awareness, public participation, public access to information, and international cooperation in meeting the ultimate objective of the Convention and in promoting climate resilient sustainable development. The Ministerial Declaration encouraged all parties to participate in and to benefit from the work of intergovernmental panels and expert groups established under the UN on matters related to climate change education, natural science, and public awareness. Also, the ministers and heads of states and governments, some of them were there, expressed their resolve to cooperate and engage
bilateral and regional complementary initiatives that aim to raise awareness and enhance education on climate change and its impacts, opportunities, and of course, co-benefits. This one is my last slide. It illustrates our main challenges in Indonesia. How can we reach stakeholders in a country that has 34 provinces, 416 regencies, 98 cities, and 74,000 villages, inhabited by 255 million people? Especially, how do we communicate with those in vulnerable areas? That's why education, including formal, non-formal, and informal education and public awareness programs, should promote the attitudes and behavior needed to prepare our societies to adapt to the impacts of climate change. In closing, distinguished guests, students, ladies and gentlemen, public participation, access to information, and knowledge are crucial for developing and implementing effective policies to combat climate change and adapt to its impacts. It is also necessary to engage actively as appropriate all stakeholders, including children, youth, the elderly, women, persons with disabilities, indigenous and local communities, and non-governmental organizations in the implementation of climate change policies. Thank you for your attention. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Bu Amanda. I think I would like to make a shortcut, so not asking for the question, but we will have later on. So, Pak Agus, Dr. Agus Sarsito is the Director of the Environmental and Climate Change and the Minister of Environment and Forestry.
Thank you, Pak Jana. I do not anticipate to present myself because I actually used to be Pak Widayanto, and I'm preparing to be in Indonesia because I thought that we are in the Indonesian University and it's Indonesia. And surprised by the great speaking because I just share with you in particular your sensitivity that might not be familiar in Indonesian language. This is very critical time. We are approaching lunchtime, and I think everybody like to say shut up and let's get at lunch. So I will shorten my presentation just to highlight a few things that I thought that would be useful for us to know what is the Ministry of Forestry and Environment doing. Because the topic that offered to us by Pak Jatna is talking about economic and environmental development, how we make it reality. So actually when we talk about the Ministry of Forestry or forestry sectors, forestry sector has been regarded as what we call the brake for the development. So if you have a car and certificate, we always have an acceleration pedal and always a brake pedal. So we are in the part of brake. So we all have to brake sometime because otherwise we will have an accident and we bring down the hill. So that, but other sector of the sea, Ministry of Forestry is like what we call slow down the development because we want to keep our forests as it is. Okay, the title in Indonesia we call it Pembangunan Hutanan as Soko Guru Pembangunan Nasional Berkelanjutan, or we call it the forestry development as fundamental for sustainable development. And I believe so. I do not believe in the result of the prayer. Okay. Right. I don't want to say it. I'll manage just a moment. Let's let's see what is our challenge. The issue in the environment that we would like to see in the future and whatever coming now. We have a population growth, and it's always related to the poverty. So we have a problem there. This is a really issue for Indonesia because when you want to improve their welfare, then it costs to the environment. And the availability of clean water. We have forests, but they have not enough clean water. When I was in the university in 1970s, I never think that I will buy a bottle of water about an aqua. It costs like $2,000 rupiah. Because when I was a kid, I just go to the pump, water pump, and then drink it. It's free of charge. I didn't buy it. But now we have to buy water, and if you cannot, you won't treat the environment carefully. We might also end up with bringing oxygen with us, tank oxygen, and we have to buy it from the oxygen producers. So I don't know whether we want to see it happen or not. It's up to us. And the other challenge is on the food security. So we have a problem, and our new government, the new cabinet, would like to secure food in Indonesia. So it costs also environment because we have to provide forest land for it. So it's not easy, not that easy. And we need energy and mining materials, which also come usually in the forest. And we want to improve the transportation. We need road, we need port, we need airport, and all of them also need forest to be converted. And not the least, everybody has talked about the climate change. So how will we deal with that? So this is, I just like to share with you on the development growth that we have, and the growth rate they only have 5.20%. So this is not enough for us to be to increase our welfare. But that's the challenge. So just to share, I want to get your attention on the poverty level in Indonesia. We have like 11%, and about 30 million people are poor, and most of them, or almost all of them, are living in and surrounding the forest. That's why the forest is also part of the social problem. This is the quality of environment that declining. I don't want to discuss this in detail. So this is what we call the dimension of sustainable development. We always talk about the economic development, we talk about the social welfare, and we talk about the quality of environment. So this is three of key elements in sustainable development, which actually we share this in the forestry sector development. So in forestry sectors, we have what we call the sustainable development, sustainable forest management. We have three aspects of that. Economic aspect, social aspect, and environmental aspect, which actually share the economic and sustainable development of the nation. So that's why I call the forestry development as the foundation of sustainable development in Indonesia. So what are we doing in the forestry development? We have principle of assessment, which is we have three aspects: the economic, social, cultural, and environmental aspect. And all of our forest functions. So we have those not familiar with our term, we have three functions of our forest designated for conservation, for protected, and also for production forest and fire. I used to be NCI, talk about mushroom conservation, and I remind him at the time that okay, we cannot talk about conservation only, but when we talk about conservation is how when we conserve forests, we also provide economic and social benefit to the community. So we cannot just conserve our forests without providing the economic and social benefit. So what we have been doing so far, we only conserving forests, we only protecting forests, forget about the function, the aspect of the sustainable development or sustainable forest management. So those aspects of sustainable forest management actually provide what we call the pro-growth, pro-poor, pro-job, and pro-prosperity as well as pro-environment. So this is the how we see the forestry in contributing to REDD Plus. Actually, when we talk about the conservation forest management, we talk about the biodiversity, we talk about conservation as part of one of the plus that we are talking about in REDD Plus. And when we implementing the SFN, we also talk about the second class of the REDD Plus. And when we talk about rehabilitation, forest rehabilitation for carbon stock enhancement, we talk about the third aspect of the REDD Plus. It means forestry activities or forestry business actually REDD Plus. So when we properly manage our forests, actually we address climate change by itself. So this is what already explained by Bu Enda about the Nawacita 9 program of the government, and we also have to be part of that, whether you like it or not. But we do it. See the policy. What I say we do is how the policy would work. So we are working on the exploration of the production forest, timber and non-timber. And when you ask, is it not problem with the environment? Well, it is, but if we do it properly, it will be good for the environment because we're talking about the carbon stock enhancement. I mean, when we rehabilitate the non-productive forest become productive forest, it actually contribute to carbon enhancement. We talk about the very popular one of the president program today is how we could provide community to get better access to the forest sector. So we have planned on that to facilitate all the people who live in surrounding in the forest with the access of the forest, and we have already allocated like 12.7 million hectares of production forest to be managed by community who live in and surrounding the forest. So this is a program that I think I want to show. So in short, so actually what the forestry doing in managing our resources in a sustainable manner, it's providing economic and social and environmental benefit, which is actually the most element of the sustainable forestry economic development. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Pak. So, I would like to ask again, Professor David King to be in the front. We have 30 minutes to have discussion. Anyone would like to suggest? We do, Mary, Indonesia. Anyone? Yes. Sorry, Bu, silakan. What is the
Okay. Thank you, Pak. My name is Pastor I would like to ask a question to Sir Reverend King. The problem of Indonesia to implementing the green economy, what the Ibu Enda already explained, this is the transition between we want to go to that area or we start to go to the area. Because when we know already that the price of oil should be no subsidized since 2008, the Ministry of Environment already did the study. Now, we reduce the subsidies, but the problem, all the prices are going up. So I know the government will be shaking for that. The second thing is also, as my colleagues from the Ministry of Forestry mentioned, there is a conflict of interest between mining and other things with the conservation of forestry. So to change this is very difficult because it will also impact to the Indonesian income. I don't know because if you compare to England, it's very difficult. We are already in developed country, but as Indonesia, how we go on the transition, so we can we can implementing all the target, all the policy on the climate change or green economy. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Carissa. I'm a student from University of Indonesia. I would like to ask to Sir David King, as you have mentioned before about the circular economy. I have read recently about some papers and articles related to the circular economy, and I think it's quite new to all of us. And I would like to know, what I have read is that it is already implemented in some corporations, but it hasn't been implemented in a nation as a whole. So do you think it is compatible for the circular economy as, I believe that the circular economy can bring a new hope for this implementation of both climate commitment, and then also the second one is to improve the environmental condition. And then the second one, what do we need to implement this circular economy to a nationwide? Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Jamal Gawi. I'm with the Social International Coalition, working in Aceh, Sumatera. I think the first two questions has been addressed or sent to Sir David King. I would like to ask this question to Pak Agus and to Amanda. I would like to call back to the statement made by Professor Endres Ali. He said that the government is a very strong actor to put forward a very good policy to support the climate economy. And here I see actually the government should use this power, Pak Agus especially, in relation to the regulation, especially the regulation to the forest and agriculture. For example, right now what we see in Indonesia is actually there is no incentive, for example, to increase the production of the existing land, existing plantation, existing agriculture. We should have that kind of incentive, and also this incentive for expansion of agriculture or expansion of plantation to the forest. So this should be a very clear policy on this from the government side, and the government should have the power to regulate this. That is the first thing. The second thing is to Ibu Amanda. Thank you very much for your very nice presentation about technical education. I guess this is very important. how to make street, climate change and education into our education system in Indonesia. And this is the obligation of the government, as stated in the law of 2009. But in reality, what happened is there is still a big gap between the people here in Jakarta with the reality in the field. We have seen this a lot. So the issue here is how to address this gap, how to accelerate employment education, working closely with local government and local education system. And of course the government has the responsibility to do this. But sometimes government should also work with non-government actors. There are some institutions that are active right now in the field that are doing good employment education. The government should use this vehicle to speed up the employment education process in Indonesia. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The first question really relates to subsidies and oil prices. And what we've seen is since June last year, oil prices came down from about $110 a barrel to $50 a barrel in January of this year. And this is a good moment to remove subsidies because then people don't feel the pain of the increase in money they have to pay. I want to stress that subsidies for oil is a subsidy very largely to middle-class people. And that is a very important part of this process. But the point of removing subsidies is to encourage people to be much more efficient in the use of energy. That's the problem. If you subsidize energy sources, you simply are encouraging wastefulness. People will buy cars that use a lot of fuel unless the fuel costs a lot of money. So you remove subsidies and you're encouraging people to shift behavior towards cars that use less fuel. In Britain, yes, oil prices will go up, and at that point, the consumer is going to feel the pain. It's only the point where they feel the pain that they're going to change behavior. So I think that's a critical point. Governments may be unpopular in that painful moment, and that's part of the problem. In Britain, we actually have introduced subsidies the other way around. So if your car is an electric car, you pay no road tax. In London, we introduced congestion charges. So if you move your vehicle into the centre of London, you have to pay a very hefty charge. It's about £15 a day, unless your vehicle is electric. If you have an electric vehicle, there is no charge. So we move the other way. We are encouraging people to move in the direction the government wants them to move, which is towards low carbon behavior. There are so many regulatory levers that governments can pull, and we're trying to do it. The second point was on the circular economy and implementation. And I think the important point I really want to make is, I'm looking into the future. I don't believe there's any economy that has switched to the circular economy. To answer the question directly, we're all still in the linear economy mode, but we are shifting behavior, and some of the shift is determined by government action. So, for example, regular collections of waste from households. Instead of collecting waste every day, we're now reducing the number of times we will collect waste. And that's to encourage people to recycle. Right? So every mechanism to encourage people to recycle is a way of getting rid of the waste problem. But I think, frankly, in terms of the switch from a linear to a circular economy, it's going to take decades before we will have a country that will be an exemplar country. But then I want to make this point. the direction of travel of global economies is critically important, which is why I wanted to emphasize 2070 may seem a long time away. It's not a long time away for my grandchildren. They will be around then. And by 2070, all societies in the world need to be at net zero greenhouse gas emissions. We need to be thinking today about that. Why do I say that? If you install a coal-fired power station today, you expect it still to be producing electricity in 50 years' time. I'd say whatever behavior we introduce today in terms of large-scale infrastructure in particular gets locked into the future. And so we have to have a direction of travel. So this is why we introduced the so-called 2050 calculator. Every piece of infrastructure we're investing in the UK has to be fit for purpose in the post-2050 world. But that's the timescale of the transition that we will make.
Pak Jamal, thank you very much. I totally agree with you. But probably your question is why it's not being done. It's a complication actually. I cannot say in a very simple word. But when we talk about the intensification of palm oil, for example, rather than extensification, I think if everybody doing their work, their role properly, then actually we can do that. I'm sure we can. But you know, the government always work on the regulation. Suppose, like for example, we not agree to provide more permit to a company, then in this country, all the paperwork administration that show the number of permits that's been issued. But then they are very clever, you know, they use different shareholders. So this is the challenge. Actually, what we need to do if we want to improve our governance, then everybody has to be very clear what we are doing. And the other challenge is also we used to have in economic planning, we only have in numbers. Like we want to increase the production of palm oil into like this much. We want to increase production of bean this much ton. But we never been able to put that into map, the special map. So if we can map that, we can eventually will see that there is no more space to expand every commodity in numbers that we already put in our plan, 5 years plan. So that's why when I talk to my colleague about finance, when we plan, we cannot only plan with numbers and narrative explanation, but we have to make it in a map. That's why we can make the one map into a reality. I think this is a trick too. From there, probably we can start not extension, but intensification is the key probably can do in the future. So the government need also the support from private sectors, from NGO to control that, from everybody, because government has a very limitation of capacity to control all those things related to this policy. So I think we have to do that, and I think we can do that as soon as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Jamal Kali, for re-emphasizing the importance of education and training and public awareness. We know that governments globally and intergovernmental organizations have worked with stakeholders in addressing issues, but we need more bigger public outreach for such a magnitude of issues like climate change. I would like to give an example that Indonesia did with this big public outreach. The first one is the Indonesia Pavilion that I mentioned. We usually do it annually at the Conference of Parties of the UNFCCC, where Indonesia showcased not only the policies but also cultures, programs, and activities, and share our activities with people or with officials from different countries, where the Indonesia Pavilion is also a platform for learning between the countries. And the second one on a national scale is the Indonesia Climate Change Education Forum and Expo. The upcoming event will be on 14th to 17th of May at the Jakarta Convention Center. Last year, the event was attended by more than 80,000 people from different backgrounds. But as we know, in such a magnitude of activities involving communication, education, and public awareness, we need a conductor, like in an orchestra. And I really envision that the new Agency for Environment and Forestry Expansion and Human Resource Development within the Ministry of Environment and Forestry will play an important role in facilitating national activities in those issues.
Thank you, Pak and Mr. David. I know that this environment will be enough for discussion, very big issues. Climate change is very, very big issues. And to summarize these very wide issues, I'd like to say that some of security mentioned by you, there are 8 securities. One of those are really a very powerful issue. One of those are really the environment forests. And especially MDG, this is really a goal and this is something that ensure sustainability and environmental sustainability. That was the most difficult goal in the 50 years, MDG. But of course, it's not only the issue for Indonesia, for everybody. The issue of the environment is always a very, very big problem. But I understand from discussion that the issue of climate change is now bigger. It's also involved many, and I believe I hear from you, Amanda, that the public sector has to be very important. Especially the students and education are very, very important. And we are one of those. Every month in the Center of Climate Change, we have a lot of guest lecture that really try to educate not only students from the University of Indonesia, but also other students, also NGOs and others are very important to understand what the issue. The second one is very important. I believe that in forest condition. I just like a little bit uneasy last night when we had a predator watching the competition where the National Geographic very big issue on the climate change. The topic is years, really years. It's very little bit. So they're mentioning about this Indonesia commitment, Indonesia need to be more focused on the path. I was mentioned about what we have to be done, what we need for Indonesia to strengthen the capacities to eliminate illegal logging, illegal deforestation, and so on. Of course, because those are 60% of the emission from Indonesia is from land use changes, not from the transportation. So I think it's very important. We have 4 people gathering here, speaker, and especially Sir David King, they are very far from UK, to share very, very important values of the climate change, because Paris, December 2015, I believe it's very important pillar for Indonesia. And one thing that I still bother, because I used to be working in the non-government organization for 50 years. So when you go back to university, I am questioning about what the role of university in the United States. Since you David coming from university, I just want to have one little question for you. What should the university play roles in? If you just ask me first.
That sounds like a very big question to me. I think that very clearly, first of all, the university is the seat of our cultural development, cultural history, so it's the broader culture that we develop. I can very quickly say our ability to understand the challenge of climate change is all through scientists largely working in the university sector, members of the IPCC and so on. This is part of the community and their function in developing our understanding of the planet. But it goes beyond that. We have been discussing, beyond climate change, we've been discussing the state of our economic thinking. If we are to change in a way that meets the challenges of the 21st century, my belief is that we need to reinsert human beings into the natural world. And one thing that has happened post-scientific development in the Industrial Revolution, we have been separating ourselves from the natural world. And in that sense, we have actually devastated the natural world because we were not caring for it. We were no longer a part of it. And I think it's very much the role of humanities people, as much as scientific community, to re-examine our cultural development. I have a colleague at the University of Oxford who is our great expert on Shakespeare. And he's written a book on eco-poiesis, he calls it, the role of poetry to recover the connection with nature. We had a great series of poets during the Romantic movement in the 18th and 19th century, Wordsworth and Keats and Shelley and Byron, who could see what was happening during the Industrial Revolution, that we were losing our contact with nature. Even then, we could understand it, that they were trying to take us back into a full respect for nature. So, my answer is very broad. I think in every aspect of our educational system, we need to be examining our direction of travel as human beings on this planet.
Thank you very much. We would like to, anything to present to the speaker?
There is some. Thank you very much, Ayatna. I'm just going to relay some questions that are from the internet audience that we have. People who are watching this activity, this event from the internet. And the question is that they would like to ask. It's a broad question. It's selected only one, not one of many. What is your strategy about food security in Indonesia as part of the global environmental issue? It's a very broad issue, but it was touched before. But food security is part of Nawacita, and so it's something that people obviously are very anxious about. Thank you.
I don't think there has to be answered by UN that is that. So, I'm sorry. I don't think anybody can answer the strategy of government on food security. Okay?
Let me share, because the Ministry of Forestry has also asked by the President how the forestry sector would contribute to the food security. Actually, when we talk about the forestry development, we have a space that is available for many commodities, including million hectares forest in Java, mostly plantation. And we have now already 10 million hectares of plantation forest outside Java. When we use like in outside Java like 5 years rotation, it means we have 2 million hectares a year to be planted. I think at least you have, and we have like 2 years space available before the first year of planting trees, and the second year we still have open space. Canopy is not yet scheduled the plantation. We have like 4 million hectares a year available for food plant. So this is the contribution of the forestry sector to the food security that we are now thinking about how we address the plantation development through the agroforestry approach. That probably is short.
Thank you, Pak Agus. I do believe that we have to add up the pace about almost 12 o'clock. So thank you very much for this attending patiently about the 4 speaker. And we applause again. We applause again.
Okay, thank you for Mr. Yana. Now next agenda is the giving of token of appreciation that will be given by Mr. Yana. And I also invite to Mr. Anjar Rafia Stanton from Zoological Society of London. For Mr. Anjar. Thank you for Bapak Anjar. The next or the second token of appreciation will be given by Mr. Yadna to Mr. Agus. Okay, thank you for your attention. Finally, from the deepest of my heart, I want to apologize for my all mistakes in this presenting this event. And thank you very much for your kind attention. And we hopefully that all of the activities can give you all benefit in the future. Thank you very much, and we have you. And for the other speakers, we invite you to. Before that, take a picture together. Next is conversation.